I am delighted to be sitting here with the amazing Jonathan Saunders. As I'm sure you all know, Jonathan is one of our brightest stars in London. He was actually born in Scotland and he studied at Glasgow School of Art, and then he went on to Central St Martin's, where you graduated with MA in print textiles in 2002. Obviously you're known for print and colour, as you can see by your bright ensemble this evening. But Jonathan's gone on to showcase menswear and womenswear, and on the London Fashion Week schedule after a little brief stint in New York, and you've just celebrated your 10-year anniversary, so
we did.
An amazing, amazing person to be sitting with. How's it going, Jonathan?
Oh, it's wonderful, thanks. Right in the midst of it, as always. I think we've got a few members of the team up there somewhere on the rafters.
Probably taking the time for a welcome snooze.
Taking a welcome nap from work. But yeah, everything's good.
Good. We've talked a little bit, very briefly there, about the present, but I really want to start by going back and talking about your life in fashion, because obviously I think some of the people here are probably fashion students. So you've talked before in interviews, you said that when you were growing up you weren't sort of sitting around flicking through copies of Vogue.
No.
Fashion wasn't really on your consciousness. Do you remember the point where fashion entered your world?
I suppose it was a very indirect path. I went to Glasgow School of Art, which is a very fine art based university, and before that all I loved was making things.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to do furniture design. I just wanted to make stuff, I suppose, and colour and materials and whatever it was that was around me, I wanted to get involved in. It was never focusing on any particular medium, so I think that it did just come through a very long, winding path. I started studying product design at Glasgow, and then moved into textile design. And as soon as I did that transition, I was always thinking about how you could use textiles or print or colour, whatever it was, to affect how somebody felt. And I think that fashion seemed like the natural avenue to take. But it certainly wasn't something that I wasn't sketching frocks at an early age. I never really thought I would become a fashion designer, and even when I did my first collection, I didn't really think I was a fashion designer either.
Why not? Why not?
I don't know, I think when you come left of field, and I think because of the path that I'd taken, it always felt like I was kind of winging it.
Do you think that's helped you though, that kind of broader...
Definitely, I think the key about any creative industry is having a point of difference and having a particular direction, I suppose. And I think that comes from people that have worked or come from a different angle other than the norm. It has its pluses and minuses, and it's been a very tricky learning curve, I suppose. But I think that it's the best way to do it for me.
So talk to me a little bit about that move from Scotland to London, because you moved to London to study at Central St Martin's. Was that a big change for you?
Yeah, I got the mega bus. It was £1 at the time. I had no accommodation, nowhere to stay, and no friends in London. I went to my interview at St Martin's for the MA, and I'd gone to the Royal College actually. I got an interview at the Royal College, I got a place at the Royal College, and I thought that that's what I was going to do. But I'd heard so much about this woman, Louise Wilson, at St Martin's, and I thought, I'm just going to do it, I'm going to try it. And I went to the interview, and I remember sitting outside the interview space, and there was a fashion student, head to toe in Vuitton, obviously from a wealthy family. I assumed that everybody from the fashion industry was like this. I looked like a tramp. I had no money and no knowledge whatsoever, and so I was basically shitting myself at the seats outside St Martin's University, waiting on Louise Wilson to interview me. And I went in, and my folio was a kind of mix of cut-up album covers from Bowie and Pink Floyd and funny drawings that I'd done that weren't really anything. They weren't fashion, they weren't design, but they were something that she obviously liked. And my enthusiasm for wanting to learn about stuff that I don't know about, which is always the thing that's driven me, was obviously there, and she gave me a place. And I think that was the biggest change in my life. I think coming from Scotland, quite a conservative family, and quite a conservative background, and I think that it made a massive difference to come to London and meet all of these people. I mean, it was the most exciting time of my life, really.
Because tell me about some of the people that were on that MA, because you're from a really interesting generation where, you know, a lot of designers came out at that time. You know, you've got Christopher Kane, do you remember studying amongst those people and the influence they had on you?
Yeah, I mean, Richard Nichol was one of my closest friends at that time, and he was on the course with me. But he'd done the BA at St Martin's, so he kind of like taught me about who was who.
It's your buddy.
Yeah, he kind of guided me through it because I felt really out of my depth, basically. And then Christopher was a year below me, Roxanda was 2 years above me. And so, but there was a real camaraderie there anyway. Not with everybody, there never is. I remember a second year student dragging a first year student by the hair down the corridor. But it was certainly, it was a camaraderie amongst a few people. And I think that the wonderful thing about St Martin's and Louise and the course there is that they teach you, they don't teach you actually, wrong phrase, they don't teach you. What they do is they encourage you to form an opinion, have a point of view. And I think that, again, that is the most important thing in any creative industry, whether you're an artist or a photographer or whatever it is. Louise has a very varied taste. You never really know what her taste is, but she doesn't really care about it. It's about doing it to the nth degree. And you know, an MA collection is very much about focusing on 6 outfits, which is, you know, now when I think about the amount of pieces of clothing that we design every year within the studio, it's crazy to think that I was even bothered about doing 6 looks. I think I'd do that in about half an hour these days. But at the time, you know, it's so concentrated, and to really like the critical eye that she has and therefore teaches you to have is an amazing education, because you really question everything, and I think that that's super important within the industry. And so my St Martin's experience was very much about that. Also getting drunk quite a lot.
Did you get a lot of creative inspiration from those evenings out?
Yeah.
And you've hinted at this. You said you felt out of your depth a little bit at some points, and we talked a little about, you know, growing up in Scotland. But I want to talk a little bit about, you know, your actual background as a designer, because as you said, you studied print and you didn't actually do cutting or tailoring. Is that one of the reasons you felt out of your depth as well?
Definitely. I think that at the time, print really wasn't even on people's wavelength, to be honest. It was a time when Margiela and conceptual designers, Belgian designers were very much of the moment. Print was really not around, and I think that in addition to the fact that I come from a product design background, to study how to design furniture, interiors, mainly furniture though is what I focused on, so to suddenly be involved with the human body and understanding how you can take what your creative ideas and put it onto clothing in a field where technically I didn't have much experience of was quite challenging. And I think that I didn't really learn how to do it until I did my own first collection. I mean, you have to learn how to do it from a college point of view. At the time it was trying to do it to the nth degree, as I'd been kind of encouraged to do, and so the print was the most important thing, and it was the most complicated process. It was labour intensive screen printing that I did. I think it was like 40 screens per design, per garment, which involves a lot of kind of arm work and a lot of late nights. I think that's what I knew how to do. I was really good at it, and so I focused on that, and that's what I did for my MA collection. And then when I first did my first collection out of college, I'd met Lou Kennedy, who had founded Fashion East. I'd had some run-in with an Italian backer who was an absolute nightmare and escaped, stealing whatever work I'd done from him. Got a flight back to London and met Lulu, who gave me £5,000 to do my first show, which is one of the first slides you can see. And I had to do the pattern cutting for that collection because it was from my bedroom in Brixton, and that's how you do it. And so I learned baptism of fire basically, and you know, there's a few dodgy sleeves in that collection, but other than that, you know, it was good because it taught me how to express what I had to express in the way that I could manage doing. And then after that, I mean, we'll come back to that, but you know, following on from that, I spent a few years grasping at trying to prove that I was able to do pattern cutting and trying to ignore my past and trying to ignore what I was good at. And you kind of go through this avenue of this journey of trying to figure out who you are as a designer. And I did that in the public eye, I suppose. In London, what's wonderful about it is you can start as a company with no money, with no financial backing, with no team or infrastructure, and yet you can be on, you know, the internet, you can be in magazines. My first collection was on the front cover of Vogue, which was so surprising to me, but fantastic because it got my brand's name out there. But I was 24, you know, it's like just out of college, you know, and with no basic background in trying to run a company. So I remember on Christmas Day basically screen printing the production orders for Harrods and Selfridges and these stores that I picked up the collection. And I had no idea what a garment had to be like from a production point of view. I mean, it was literally baptism of fire, as I said.
Why do you think people responded so well to your work? Because you said, you know, your first collection was on the cover of Vogue. Why did people engage with it so well?
I think because I wasn't in the industry, I was away in my own little world. And for me, I didn't think about it as a collection that was closed, that, you know, as a company. I don't know, I'm trying to put myself back in that headspace, because for me it was very self-indulgent. You know, it was just a project that I was working on that got me excited and I loved doing. It was very labour intensive, the process of creating those fabrics that I did for that collection. I didn't really think about anybody actually buying it or wearing it, which is strange coming from a fashion designer.
That's so central to how you work now. You've talked a lot about responding to your customer, haven't you?
Yeah, and I think it was that kind of naivety that maybe sparked a note with people, and also because fashion was very overworked at that point. Pattern cutting was very conceptual. There was sometimes 3 sleeves on garments, you know, with contemporaries. And I think because of my naivety, I didn't know how to do that. And so what they were canvases for print and colour, and then therefore people understood that and could relate to that because it was an accessible, easy to understand piece of clothing. I then tried to get away from that and I got overcomplicated, and that's what happens as a creative person. You kind of experiment and you try things out.
Yeah, talk to me a bit about that time, you know, because you did make a focus on being, you know, an architectural sort of tailoring designer for a while. Talk to me about those years.
Those years. 2 of them. Yeah, I think that...
You're going to take a big swig of wine.
Yeah, I'm going to have a little while of wine to get me going. Yeah, I think that that's one of the pluses and one of the minuses of being a British designer, is that you do start from nothing and you're put out there. You don't have to have an advertising campaign, people do it for you. If you've caught some kind of nerve, and if you're lucky, which I was, and I think that basically when you do that, you don't have the infrastructure behind you to kind of learn how to run it as a company. So I did 1 season, and then I was still producing the other one, and then the next minute I knew that, you know, I had a collection to do in 2 weeks, and you're kind of trying to do something new. And I think fashion is about newness, whereas at the time you're trying to, and that's the whole balance of being a designer, is that you get bored easily, you want to try something new, but then you have a brand which people want to buy into and kind of associate with you. And so I struggled with that at the beginning. I struggled with being just labelled as a print designer because I felt like it was quite two-dimensional, and I think that it would limit me in terms of long term, having a business, one-trick pony, you know, and so a few funny collections of strange shapes and combinations of print with architectural design came from that. None of which I'm ashamed of, because I think it's a great journey and some of them were fantastic, but it's just something to know that, you know, you can go through those kind of times and you can experiment with stuff until you come to terms with the fact that, okay, so this is my opinion, this is how I can express it in the best way possible, and this is something that you need to really think about the customer, think that's what's interesting about fashion, is that the customer is really important. An artist can produce a body of work. If it's good, they don't care what anybody thinks, they do it for themselves. And there has to be an element of that from a designer's point of view, but also you're a designer, so you're designing it, especially with women's wear. I'm not wearing a pencil skirt, am I? You know, like, you need to understand why she wants it. Using the tools that you have. It's not for everybody, but the tools that you have, if what you love is print and colour, how do you do that but understand how a woman would like to wear it? That takes a long time, you know. It's a long time to kind of get to grips with and understand.
Talk to me about finding that balance a little bit, because you kind of hinted at it there. Do you ever have ideas that are really creative and you want to push forward with them, but finding that balance between doing something that your customer will identify with? You never feel limited by that?
No, I think it's a humbling experience. I think that it's hard sometimes, and when you're trying to understand, you know, you're almost fighting with yourself, you know, especially when you come from a small company when you deal with a lot. I mean, the team would say, like, all of us multitask and do lots of different jobs. And so one head's saying, you know, like, it's that commercial, and one head's saying, you know, I actually have conversations with myself sometimes.
It's like a therapy.
About trying to understand and make the balance between what you love and feel passionate about, what comes naturally through a creative process. Because a creative process is very organic, isn't it? You come up with an idea, you try something out, especially when you're making things with your, you know, materials. You have a concept, you try it out, it doesn't work, you change it accordingly, you know, and you go down this, like, road, and sometimes if you don't pop out and look at what you've done from a collection, you can end up down in another direction that you never even know, and forget completely about the consumer. And I think that a designer is somebody that has to consider the person that is using that object, I suppose. Fashion is different because it has a story to tell. It's a fantasy element to it, because it's not just about admiring an object, it's about how it makes you feel. Do you feel sexy? Do you feel intelligent? Do you feel charismatic? Do you feel optimistic? All of those feelings can be created through what you do as a designer, which is different from doing tables and chairs. So yeah, waffle.
No, not at all. Before we're kind of going on with your career, but I want to just take a little step back to that period, Rena, when you were starting out, because you did work with some really interesting names. You know, you worked with Alexander McQueen, he commissioned you to do a print. You worked with Phoebe Philo when she was at Chloe.
Good.
Was that part of that period where you were learning more about cutting? What was it that you took most from those experiences?
Well, I mean, I love my job, like, I love work. Like, I absolutely love it. And I think for me it was just a thirst for knowledge about how to do it. When you come from Glasgow School of Art, which is very conceptual, and then you go to St Martin's, which is less conceptual but is very about the idea in fashion, you have no idea about how the infrastructure of a fashion company works, because there's no part of my education that was telling me about that. And so those consultancies in the first year of when I graduated were an unbelievably beneficial learning curve. I worked for nothing for all of them. I didn't get paid from any of the work that I did. But it didn't really matter to me, because I was going into companies and saying, oh God, that's that person that does that, and oh, this is how it works. And Lee was an amazing inspiration to me, because he was from a working class background, and so was I. And I always thought of fashion designers coming from affluent backgrounds, being very well read, and even though I had a passion for fine art and I knew about it because I love it so much, I didn't really know about anything else. And I think that meeting him and understanding how you can be that type of person and yet come up with something that's really beautiful, really taught me how it worked in that way. So that was an amazing experience. And he was very generous in terms of introducing me to people and making me understand how the industry works. And then Phoebe, when she was at Chloe, was a very surprisingly professional person in terms of the business and what the customer wanted and what her particular taste was versus what Chloe as a brand was. And so, and she was very hands-on, which I like and respect in a person. I don't like people that don't get their hands dirty, and I think that Phoebe came down to Brixton and was in the print studio and she was talking to me about stuff, and I was trying things out as we were talking, and she, you know, was the same kind of person as I am, which I found really reassuring. and you know, she's gone on to be such a wonderful designer and an amazing influence in terms of the industry. And then I worked for Pucci, which from a print perspective was an amazing experience, and it, particularly because it was Christian Lacroix.
Yeah.
Went out to Paris and met him in a little cafe again, and I think I'd really been to Paris, and I met this man that all I knew he'd been on absolutely fabulous. that was about the extent of it, but he was a wonderful, you know, backlog of knowledge and a passion for clothing and passion for design, which was so inspiring. So I had this really lucky like trilogy of people that really taught me how to do it, to have confidence in what I was doing, and to kind of understand what's so great about the industry.
You mentioned that kind of being at those companies and seeing how the fashion industry works, how the business side works, and that's often, going back to the designers we talked about earlier, you know, people like Christopher Kane and Rossando and Richard.
Yeah.
People often put that tag on you guys. It was that kind of generation that stopped London just being about this sort of crazy creativity and made it about building a viable company.
Yeah.
Is that must be something you're quite proud of, to be seen in that context?
Definitely. I think that was the case, you know, for a long time. International buyers, international press would come to London to look at it, to appreciate it, and to kind of snigger behind their backs while they went to Milan and spent their money. And I think that I've thought a lot about why this has happened, because for me it was a realisation that by thinking about the customer is not a dumbing down of your idea. When you think of a lot of great designers, they really considered who their consumer was and who their customer was, no matter how creative they were as a person. And I think that it just took a couple of us to try and focus on that, and a lot of hard work to be able to be taken seriously. And it's all to do with, like, it's just luck, you know. You get an order from a couple of stores, you can afford to be able to do this, and it's making wise decisions and a bit of luck throughout the whole process that takes it from being a tiny little bedroom operation to being a company. And I think that Christopher and Roxy and all of us who are friends with each other have realised is that it's really important to be able to build those businesses to allow you to be able to say what you want to creatively anyway.
Why do you think there is that strange association though, that to do something good or creative it has to be completely removed from any sort of commerciality? Yeah, why is
it's a very British thing. You know, it's like a punk attitude, isn't it? It's comes from the music industry, the rebellious attitude of British youth culture. And it's an amazing thing because so many good things have come from it. It's just about a balance, you know, and I think that there's ways and means of you being able to express yourself in a creative way, but respecting the fact that you have a business. Not that I'm saying I've got a fantastic business and I get it right all the time. I mean, hell no, we get it wrong a lot, and I think that it's just about an appreciation of the fact that you're in an industry as opposed to being an artist.
We talked a little bit about your first collection, and I want to go back a little bit to the way you design and the way you work as a designer. And you mentioned, you know, how time-consuming that collection was because you do use traditional silk screening. You know, you use that's very traditional technique. Why have you always been so passionate about doing that rather than embracing sort of that digital print thing that we've seen so much of?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like things that are slightly crude. I like the joy in the mistake. That's firstly one of the most important things. And I think that, I mean, I do digital print as well as part of the collection, but I think that the importance about luxury for me is about craftsmanship. You know, and interestingly, the consumer is much more interested in that now than they were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, fashion was about Gucci, branding, you know, a logo on a bag, a second line with a branding, you know, a logo on it, which is, you know, not very inspiring, to be honest. And I think that, you know, I'm lucky that I live in a time where the consumer, not only the industry, but the consumer wants something that is innovative and interesting and makes them stand out from the crowd. They don't want the label on the back of it necessarily. I mean, if they do, they want to be through association of an image as opposed to a literal branding. Am I waffling? Yes, I am a little bit. Anyway, the bottom line is that I love craft and I love the craftsmanship of developing a textile. Digital print in itself is a craft because if you're engineering, it's the body. That's what I did when I first started.
Yeah.
A balance of doing screen printing and that. Unfortunately for me, you need to get excited and passionate about something. For me, it's quite easy to replicate now on the high street, and therefore it takes the value out of it, and therefore the customer doesn't understand it. And so I like things that are a challenge and things that are able to develop. So I try to do new textiles every season, which is to the joy of our production department upstairs over there. But yeah, we like to try new things out.
Because you're almost as known now. You mentioned those textiles as you are for your print, I would say. That must be sort of, again, a source of pride to you, because you mentioned those years where you didn't want to be a one-trick pony. You must feel very much so now that people don't just think of you as a print designer, or are you just more comfortable with that tag now?
Yeah, I think I'm a colourist, and I think that I came to a realisation about how to tell a story, but how to allow the consumer to interpret it in their own way. Separates basically, in a nutshell. And so I think that it's for me, I really like the fact that I can do other things. It was kind of the reason why I started menswear as well, because you do get put into a bracket of a certain thing because you're creating a brand and you need to do things in a certain way. And menswear allowed me to kind of almost go back to right at the beginning where I was a product designer and I was doing furniture, because it's very much about the product. And I found myself being able to do things which were almost about a colour story or an innovative jacquard or whatever it was. Everything still having to have a development to it, everything having to have an element of bespoke, but being able to do something that wasn't so printy.
What did you think of that whole sort of print revolution, explosion that came out of London? And was that quite frustrating? You mentioned, I loved it when you said when you were starting out, no one was really doing print. It was kind of a bit of a, not a taboo, but it was a bit outside the box. Cool. Yeah, exactly. What did you think when that happened? Were you a bit like, oh, guys, keep up with me?
No, not at all. I think what's great about it and wonderful about it is that the fact that, as I mentioned before, about how women worldwide and men are wanting something to kind of be innovative and stand out and have a point of difference, I suppose, and steered away from big brands and wanted to buy into individual designers that had a real character. Print is a wonderful tool of telling a story in a very quick way. You say it, and it's quite an easy way of saying it. If I'm trying to tell a story, which is what I always do at the beginning of a season, like who is she, where's she hanging out, what's she doing, where's she from, what's inspiring this season, how is it reacting against new season, because how are you going to get somebody to come in and buy something new if they've already bought it in January, and you're delivering it in March. The newness is a really important part of fashion. So I am waffling, sorry, that is the wine. What I'm trying to say is that I think it was really important that it happened. I think that there's other ways and means of doing craft, and so I'm interested to see how those people are going to explore that.
Cool. You mentioned this newness thing, and it leads me to a question that I want to ask you a little bit about, because you hinted at this earlier on in the discussion. Fashion fetishizes change, and it fetishizes the new.
Yeah.
Do you find that ever worrying? Does that ever bother you? This constant sort of focus on putting out something completely new, but also this fetishization of the young kids that are coming up St. Martin's.
No, I love it.
Oh, that's
I
good.
think it's great. I think that there's no other creative field. I find the other creative field, when I did furniture, or when you think about any other field of design, you work in a project and you do it, and you keep doing it, and you become a signature, and it's kind of, for me, I would get bored. And I think that it's only people that think like that can become fashion designers, because otherwise you're screwed. You need to be able to do a body of work, do it in an intense period of time, do it to the best of your ability within the time frame you have, and then hate it 3 seconds later and work on the new thing, because that's what makes the industry work.
You don't hate all your collections, do you?
Pardon?
You don't hate all your collections now?
You always hate it just directly after it, and then you start to like it again a couple of seasons later when you reflect. But it's a natural knee-jerk reaction because you are about newness, and so you therefore have... I mean, I don't know whether the outsider views it like that. I don't know whether they look at a collection and see the following season as something radically different. But internally, and me personally, you know, it's always the opposite. The last two collections I've just done, the fall collection was very much about the waist and was much more about a stricter woman, and the fabrics were much more textural. It was about texture basically, and therefore the season after was, you know, the opposite: low slung waist, relaxed attitude, much more day-wear focused, a hippie, dreamy person, completely contrasting to the vixen that we had for the season before. Whether the consumer reads it like that, I don't know, but personally it's quite a radical change. But that's what keeps me going, you know. It keeps you changing, and change is good, and it would never be a challenge if everything wasn't going wrong, and everything that you tried to try and express this new idea of yours was driving everybody in the studio crazy.
You've sort of mentioned this a couple of times during the discussion, how you start collecting. You mentioned you think of your woman, you know, what's she up to, what's she doing, but also this idea of change. Talk me through that process where you begin a show, where you begin a collection. Is it about what's completely different from the new season? How does it work? Where does it start?
For me, it starts with colour. Generally speaking, like I collect together scraps of pieces of paper or pieces of fabric or whatever it is, and you create a colour palette. And it's always in the notion of what is the opposite. You know, if you do a collection which is artificial colour, you know, you think of Peter Saville and you think of Pet Shop Boys and anything that's technological and about plastic and those kind of colours, then you work on that palette and you compose it, and within that palette you think about what colours contrast with each other or clash with each other, because clashing gets me excited because it's something new. Yellow's not new, pink's not new, red's not new, but yellow with pink might be new, and pink with brown might be new. So like the colours exist already, it's how you combine them together. So that's how I start, and then you look at those colours and it makes you think of a character or a person. So last season I composed that palette, which was in contrast to the palette I'd done in the previous season. And then you think, oh, that looks a bit like a hippie, you know, like dreamy. And then you go off and you go to every bookshop you can find, and you source information, and you think about everything that you can get your head around that is in visuals, because I very rarely read anything. Because and you gather in that information. So, you know, there might be an artist that I think about, oh, they use that colours, okay, let's research that. Or there might be that kind of thing. You just spontaneously look around you, and the little time that you have to research, because we have such time schedules, you just like ravenously collect imagery as fast as you possibly can to tell that story. And then you do your drawings, and then you discuss that with pattern cutters, and then you talk about it with the design team, and then you try it, and then half of it doesn't work, and half of it looks hideous. And then you drop that, and you reinvent it, and you change it around, and you just go through this like manic process of trying to get it done for the deadline, and trying to make sure that your idea is expressed in the way that you want to express it. And then you do it. Before you know it, you're backstage at a show, and you've got a lineup of girls in the outfits, and bang, done.
And they're off.
Yeah.
And then you hate it.
Yeah.
Let's talk a
you
little
hate
bit
it and
about.
start again.
Let's talk about where you show, because you have shown in New York and you're showing in London again now. Tell me a little bit, why is London important to you, and what inspired that move?
I went out to New York for commercial reasons. I thought that Anna Wintour was really supportive. She came to the shows, she phoned me straight after one of my shows and said, look, I think that, you know, you're talented and whatever, and I want to help you, and it was really good and really helpful. She said, I think that maybe if you came out to show in New York, then we could get people to understand it a bit better. It was an odd suggestion, and then I kind of thought about it and I thought, no, I'm not going to get it, it's going to be really strange, and I don't really like Americans that much. And it's
they wouldn't be able to understand your accent.
Exactly. Do you understand my accent?
They're all saying hello.
No, yeah. So, but I knew that, and we'd just been picked up by a couple of American stores, and I was kind of like, I don't really get, I can't even imagine my clothes out there. I can't even imagine that situation. Maybe we should do it. And so I went out there, and I thought also it's a kind of way of reinventing yourself. I was around in London for a little bit, you know, maybe people were a bit bored of it. I thought, okay, so I can go to New York and it's kind of like new. And everything, you know, again, fascination with newness. You can wipe the slate clean, you can start a new way. And it was really good because I understood the American market, and it was really good to be able to get the press that I got, to basically advertise your brand without an advertising campaign when you can't afford it. And it worked. But then I was just like, you know, I just remember after the show when we all went from after the show to like talk about it, and it was like, it was this kind of slightly different attitude. In London, you know, we all used to rough it, and everybody would come to each other's shows and be like, whoa, it's done. But I kept on doing it, and then I got a call saying, oh, it's British London Fashion Week's 20th anniversary. Do you want to come back? And I was like, yep. So about 2 seconds to decide, pretending that, oh, you know, I'm in New York now, and I kind of jumped at the chance, to be honest. And so I came back for the 20th anniversary, and I think that, and not only did I not see a depreciation in sales, but I saw a jump in sales. And I think that that made a difference because I was happy and I was here, and I love London, like it's my home, and all my friends are here. And I get inspired here, and I feel like the show process, which is the late nights and the excitement and the build up to trying to make the impossible happen in the time period you've got, feels right when you're doing it here.
It suits London.
It suits London, yeah. And so I was glad to come back.
Let's talk a little bit, you hinted at this before when you mentioned kind of the pace and how many collections you're producing, because also you now have London Collections Men.
Yeah.
So you've got a big workload. Tell me how you navigate that and how many collections you're producing and how you find the time to... Does the pace ever just get too much?
I don't know what the outside perception is of what a fashion designer does, you know, because it's not drawing all the time. You know, you do it about maybe 10% of your time. The idea is important, the drawing is important, but the figuring out of how to make your idea into a reality is the job. And to also bear in mind the commercial aspect of what you do. And so it's hard purely because of the time that you have. I think, you know, you really care about what you do, and it's a lot of it is making a textile design or a fabric design or a new cut of a dress or whatever it is, in such a short period of time. We do 4 women's collections a year and 2 men's collections a year, so that's 6. Plus I do about 7 other collections a year based on different consultancies, etc. I'm less hands-on with those projects, but I think that that's what we all struggle with, and the team, and I mean, obviously it's not about me, you know, it's about a whole bunch of people. All of us work super hard, and I'm very, very lucky to have a team that really believe in what we do, you know, and I think that that is crucial to any designer. You know, we can faff around, but we make mistakes, and without the infrastructure of people around us to be able to do that, they're as important as I am, basically. I'm not just saying that because half of them are here. But they are, and that is the challenge in getting it done in the time. It's not rocket science, it's just the fact that you're trying to do something new and trying out different things, and usually people would have in the creative industry 6 months to a year to develop that, try things out, make sure that it's perfect. And what we need to do is make it perfect in half the time. And I think that that is the challenge, really.
Is that pace sustainable? Do you think the pace that the industry works at?
I don't know what will happen with it. I think it may implode. I think the difficulty now is that we're delivering a pre-fall collection in May, which is starting. If I was going shopping in May, then I would be thinking about my summer holidays or the hot weather. It's pre-fall. Winter collections are delivered in June. It's boiling hot. Summer collections are delivered in January. It's freezing cold. You know, and it's quite confusing. And at the minute we're all pretending we know what we're doing, and we don't really, to be honest. And I think that it's a challenge for sure. But it's a good thing about fashion is none of us really know what we're doing.
Just making it up as we go along.
We'll make it up as we go along. I think that the fascinating thing about fashion is that I notice it when I go on trunk shows. Last week I was in Australia. 3 days ago I was in Singapore. I was meeting the client there. I've never met them before. There's women in the shop trying things on. The fit is completely different. She's picking up things that I would never expect her to pick up. She's loving things that I would never expect her to love. And you learn all the time as you go along, but the markets are so different. And you're selling a spring-summer collection around the world, where in Australia it's the winter, when in Asia it's just hot all the time. It's a challenge, and you're learning every day, but it's a wonderful challenge,
I mentioned right at the start of this talk, it's your 10-year anniversary, which is obviously really exciting. So firstly, congratulations.
I'm 35.
So but you've kind of hinted as we've gone along about ways in which you've grown your aesthetic and changed it and developed it. But tell me, it's a kind of simplistic question to ask, but if you had to kind of summarise what Jonathan Saunders, the man and the brand, are like now, compared to when you started. You can do the brand more than what's different now if someone looks at a Jonathan Saunders collection compared to that first collection that you mentioned earlier.
I think the first collection and now are very similar. I could compare it to what the middle was like, and I think it's much more honest. I think that what I love, I get excited by so many things, but colour, optimism, how those things make you feel, and I love luxury and I love craft. And it's combining those two things to make things that people love and talk about as an item. I love to tell a story in a fashion show, but I love even more the thought of an item getting somebody excited. And that's probably from my product design background. A beautiful piece of knitwear that maybe it's a funny colour combination that you think, oh, that's unexpected. Or, an interesting textile technique that we've developed. It's those things that get me excited, and I think that that's what the brand is about. It's not intricate tailoring, it's not draping, it's not some fierce, hard girl or boy. But what I hope that it brings is a kind of universal thing. I wouldn't say that it's a particular person. It's the fact that that person can, if they feel like that, buy into the brand. I find often women and men that often wear, black or simplistic clothes or whatever it is, they find it an accessible way to wear something that's quite bold in an easy way. When people look at bold things, people are attracted by bold things, but they are frightened of them in certain ways. Whereas I feel like people can buy into what I do that aren't necessarily into that in an accessible way. They can buy a men's coat and they can feel the fabric and they can see the colour blocking, whatever it is, and they can feel like it's not wearing them, I hope.
So what's next for you?
God.
I just want to go to bed.
I want to go to bed.
Want a cigarette?
I've been up since 4. What's next? I don't know, just fixing stuff. I always think that something's wrong and you need to fix it, and things need to be better and things need to be worked on. They do, things go wrong in a young company all the time. And so with the help of the team and everybody working together, that's all I think of. Fixing it and making things better and making things work in a more streamlined way and being able to express ourselves creatively, but understanding the person who's going to buy it. And you just learn all the time, and I think that I'm very lucky to have had the experience that I've had. you know, coming from where I have and coming from the background that I have, which is far from privileged, that you can kind of be able to do what I do. You know, it's an amazing job, and but you're never quite satisfied. So I'm just trying to get better, basically.
That's a very humble answer.
Oh, I don't know about that.